I'm in Shenandoah National Park, and this is the Ivy Creek overlook. This is mile marker 77. Yep, there it is, a little red car. Pretty nice overlook here. Out there, Skyline Drive. And right here is the Appalachian Trail trailhead. So I'm going to get on the AT and hike south down to the Ivy Creek shelter, which is down this way. And then I'll probably loop back on Skyline Drive because that'll take me past another overlook or two. This is a stretch of the AT that I haven't hiked before. The elevation here is 2875. Right here at the trailhead, Appalachian Trail trailhead, is a informational sign talking about the Appalachian Trail. It crosses, well, it's 2,180 miles, and it crosses 14 states, 5 national parks, including this one, 7 national forests, and it runs from Georgia all the way up to Maine. And there's 101 miles of the AT here in Shenandoah. So this is part of it right here. Cruising along the AT here, hiking south towards the Ivy Creek shelter. And in about a half a mile, I'm going to reach a point where 3 counties here in Virginia come together. So when I get there, I don't know if there's anything like a marker or not. But anyway, I'll show you where it is on the map when I do the map talk. Six-tenths of a mile into my hike, I'm up to 3,050 feet. I've been climbing steady ever since I left the parking lot, but I'm up to a local high point. That's where I came from, and this is the Tri-County spot. I don't see anything noteworthy up here like a benchmark or anything. And I don't see anything on the map to indicate that there is a benchmark up here. But anyway, that's where I came from. Over that way is Greene County. And that way is Albemarle County. And over here on the west side, over here, is Rockingham County. So somewhere right up in here, plus or minus a few feet, is where all 3 counties come together. .9 miles into my hike. The elevation here is 2945. and still hiking along the Appalachian Trail. And then this is a view looking in the west direction. I'm out on a little bit of a rock outcrop here. And then you can see how rocky it is here. And then just behind those rocks is the AT. .5 miles into my hike. The elevation here is 2560. I've been descending. And these are the headwaters of Ivy Creek. See a little bit of a cascade up there. Here's the trail going across. That's where I'm headed. And then down the side of the mountain, down the east side of the mountain. That trail's where I came from the north. And I'm going to cross over and head on, start climbing back up a little bit that way to the south. .9 miles into my hike. I'm up to 2750. Still hiking along the Appalachian Trail. There's where I came from, along the AT, up from crossing over Ivy Creek. And I'll show this in detail when I do the map talk, but right here next to this log, there is a very faint depression of an old road that goes up there and it goes over that rise, and then it heads down to the east to a spot called Mission Home. I hiked part of it a year or so ago, but I didn't do the whole thing, so this is one of my bushwhacks, is to come back here and I'll hike it all the way to the park boundary. But it starts here, and to tell you the truth, I think it used to, back in the day, I think Ivy Creek's down there, and I think that road the old road used to cross over here and go right on down and go across Ivy Creek and then head up towards modern day Skyline Drive. But for now, I'm going to continue climbing the mountain here on the AT until I get up to a turnoff to go to the Ivy Creek shelter. .3 miles into my hike, still climbing the mountain. I'm up to 2960 elevation. There's the Appalachian Trail, that's where I came from. And here's the turnoff. We're going to turn off here to the right and follow this over to the shelter. It's only 200 or 300 yards from here. If you keep going this way to the south, you're climbing Loft Mountain, and a ways up there is the summit and some viewpoints. But This is basically the turnaround point for my hike. I get to here, then we're going to keep going to the east over to Skyline Drive and then loop back to my starting point a couple miles that way. So let's go over here to this Ivy Creek shelter. Kind of a note to myself, when I do the map talk on Ivy Creek shelter, it's got kind of an interesting history to it. It's the replacement shelter for an earlier shelter that was up there on Big Flat Mountain. I'll explain that when I do the map talk. .4 miles into my hike. The elevation here is 2920, and this is the Ivy Creek shelter. Now you'll notice it's all boarded up. That's because it's closed as a shelter these days. They put a sign on there. It says Ivy Creek PATC Maintenance Building, no camping. So these days they're using it, PATC is using it as a staging area to do trail maintenance. So I'll explain that when I do the map talk. That's the way I came. Up this way is the summit of Loft Mountain. Over here, well, that's interesting. That says carry out refuse. And then there's an old fireplace with a grill. Down here's the spring. It's got a pretty nice flow going these days. See that? And then that drains down into Ivy Creek, down that way. And after I get done drinking some water and so forth, I'm going to continue on that way to the east, over to Skyline Drive, and then I think I'm going to hike Skyline Drive back to my car, back that way. So, picnic table here. Oh, one more. There's another fireplace over here, fire pit over here. I don't think anybody's using it these days, but there it is. And here's one end of the shelter. That metal rod going down is a copper rod, lightning rod. And there's one on the other end over there protecting the fireplace, the chimney going up. So there you have it, the Ivy Creek shelter, now a maintenance building. Okay, well, I'm saying goodbye to the Ivy Creek shelter, and I think in my earlier video I said that this road heading over to Skyline was heading east, but I got it backwards. It's heading west. But keep in mind that it's only about a half a mile or so from Skyline Drive to that shelter back there behind me now. And you see how easy it is to get over here just walking down this road. So I think what happened was, well, hold on a second. There's some old privies there. Those are the old pit style. AT through hikers still use them probably. Anyway, this road, you can see how easy it is to come down this road, and it's fairly level. So once they put Skyline Drive in, you see party animals could you know, park up there on Skyline and just, you know, half a mile walk down this road and you're back to your favorite party cabin / love shack. Leave your beer bottles, you know, leave your trash behind you. So The Park Service, I think it was sometime in the 60s, decided, okay, the hell with it, we're going to close. We're going to close either a lot of these shelters or all of them. I think they might have closed them all for a while, which is a real hardship for AT through hikers, because that means you'd have to hike 105 miles of the AT with no shelter, except for whatever you can carry on your back. So I guess they opened a lot of them up, but this one stayed closed. .8 miles into my hike, I'm up to 2,840 feet. That's where I came from, up that fire road, which is the road to the Ivy Creek shelter. Here's Skyline Drive. That's looking south, and maybe you can read that sign, says Wayside. There's Loft Mountain Wayside's right up there, off to the right. So this is my turnaround point. I'm going to loop back to my car this way along Skyline Drive. It's about 2 miles. Almost a Rocky Top overlook. Elevation 2860. Oh, come on, people. Now 4.1 miles into my hike. The elevation here is 2860, and this is Rocky Top overlook. Got about another quarter of a mile back to my car, but here's a view from Skyline Drive. I'm standing on a stone wall. Probably be some more views up that way. Almost back to my car now. That's the way I came from, Skyline Drive. The mountain's really steep here. I mean, it drops off almost straight down. Down there's Ivy Creek. And right down there at that bend to the left is my car. This is a map of today's hike. The quadrangle name is McGaheysville 1999, and I hiked a stretch of the Appalachian Trail that I haven't hiked yet. I started to hike right here at Ivy Creek Overlook, which looks to the east This is mile marker 77. There's also a trailhead that puts you directly onto the Appalachian Trail here. So I got on the AT. Now this map shows the AT coming this way, but it's been rerouted over to here. So follow the AT on down. When I got to here, this was one of the higher points on the hike. This was my tri-county point. This is Greene County, Albemarle County, and over here on the west is Rockingham County. And all three of them come together right there. So I stopped there and took a short video clip. Then continued on to the south along the AT. Here I stepped out on a rock outcropping and got some shots looking to the west. This viewpoint here. You cross over the headwaters of Ivy Creek right about there. Continue on to the south. Oh, when I got to this point right here, this is an abandoned road that heads off to the east to a village over here called Mission Home, Virginia. And I hiked this trail from here, maybe up to about here, a couple of years ago. And I've got this on my list of bushwhacks. So I'm going to go back and hike it all the way to the park boundary, which is right there. Anyway, continued on to the south along the AT. Now I'm climbing Loft Mountain. Get to here, take a right, come down here and visit the Ivy Creek shelter. And I've got a few more sheets of paper to give you some history about this and its predecessor shelter in a minute. Continued to the west on the access road to Skyline Drive, and then did a return loop along Skyline Drive. I stopped here at the Rocky Top Overlook, got some shots, and then back to my car. Ended up being 4.7 miles. This was a fairly easy hike, 4.7 miles with a total ascent of 862 feet. Now let me talk a little bit about the Ivy Creek shelter and the Loft Mountain campground, which is down here. And the predecessor to this shelter was one called Big Flat. Well, first of all, okay, I changed my mind about the order here. Here's another map. Up here is the Ivy Creek shelter on this map. I added some more to the south. Right here is the Loft Mountain campground. Now, notice that the Ivy Creek shelter is built on Loft Mountain. Loft Mountain campground is not on Loft Mountain, it's on Big Flat Mountain. Apparently, when the Park Service put this campground in, they liked the sound of Loft Mountain better. So even though the campground is on Big Flat, they gave it the name Loft Mountain Campground. Okay, so go figure. Loft Mountain Campground is actually on Big Flat Mountain. Now, before this campground was here, there was a shelter right about along in here, I just marked it there, called Big Flat Shelter, which makes sense because Big Flat Shelter is on Big Flat Mountain. So originally there was a Big Flat Shelter. Then what they did was, now let me switch back to my sheet here. Big Flat was built in the early 1940s by PATC, and on the PATC website I saw a reference to it being somewhere near the current amphitheater, which is where I marked it on the map. It was removed in the 1960s. The shelter was removed to make room for the Loft Mountain Campground. They also rerouted the AT. The AT originally came up like this and just cut across the northern part of what's now the campground and then continued on to the north like this, okay? Well, when they put the campground in, they took out the shelter, and the original route went right by the shelter, okay? When they put in this campground, they took away the shelter and they rerouted. Now, current day, the AT goes all the way like this, makes a big loop-de-loop around the campground before it continues on to the north like that, okay? Well, they needed a replacement shelter, so in 1965, the Ivy Creek shelter was built as a replacement. Okay, so then you had the Ivy Creek shelter. Sometime in the 1970s, the Park Service, I think, was having a lot of problems with abuse of the shelters, so they closed all of them, and then they eventually reopened most of them. But Ivy Creek is one of the ones that did not get reopened. Instead, they converted it into a maintenance shelter for PATC trail maintainers. This is a copy from the PATC website of what the big flat shelter looked like. Now, this is taken from the back of the shelter. Around front, there's a stone fireplace and probably a picnic table. It's worth noting how clear the mountain is of trees back then, back in the 1940s. Look how clear of trees the mountain was. This is a list of AT shelters that have been removed from the Shenandoah National Park. And there's 10 of them listed there. You can freeze this video if you want to study it. But number 7 is Big Flat Shelter, the one I'm talking about today. All of these other ones, I have visited the locations of them. Sometimes all you can find is a spring. Sometimes you can actually find some stone foundations of buildings that used to be there, and sometimes there's really no trace at all. And that was the hike for today.